So The Last of Us 2 apparently has a remaster in the works, and with a steady stream of what feels like big titles getting remastered and remade, a lot of people are asking the question, why? Some people are being critical about this. Some people are getting excited about this. It sort of depends on where you land with the titles or what your opinion in general is about remasters and remakes. Some of us, I haven't even actually ever gotten to play the game. It came out in 2020 and I was not able to get to it. I had a lot of other things going on, and it was like, man, I've always heard mixed responses to the game. It's one of those games that sort of draws criticism for just a whole host of reasons, and I'm not really interested in discussing any of those reasons, because video games are always going to be subjective. There's always going to be strong opinions about how games should be or shouldn't be, or what, how they should turn out. But this is one that I think it makes sense, even though I understand the criticism. Like, I get where people are coming from. A lot of people just sort of say, really? Another remaster? Like, why are we doing this again? There's already been some whispers about a Horizon Zero Dawn remaster. And I want to give my opinion on this, because the criticism, or sort of the critical view of remasters, is growing. And I think this is going to be a common theme, because we are now in this next generation, and so many of the previous titles can tap into what these consoles can do. And especially when we're seeing now that gap, being a bridge built between PC and console, PlayStation wanting their games to sort of be in both places, I think this makes sense, even if it is something that people are going to be critical of. The Last of Us Part 1 remake was such a huge leap, because folks like myself, I never played The Last of Us Part 1 remaster. I played the original game what feels like an age ago. And so when they made that really big jump, I was like, man, this is a great experience. It's in my backlog right now. I plan to replay The Last of Us Part 1 remake. I want to experience that. And I think they did that, and then they did that in tandem with bringing it to PC. Now, the PC port was rushed. They completely mishandled that. The lack of ownership, the lack of transparency on the PC port, I think is embarrassing for a piece of property that is so important to PlayStation. They were rushing it out because of the popularity of the TV show. I think they would have been far better suited just waiting, because now that thing's sitting there with a pretty bad score on Steam, and it's hard to shake a bad score, especially when you burn people that are the most committed or the most excited to play your game, and they buy it and it's a terrible state. And I don't think it's easy to walk that back, but that, I do feel, is tied to this, right? I think other people are looking at this and they're just excited to play an up-to-date version of the game. Maybe they never played it, but there's also that idea that they're doing this to work in tandem with the PC port. Many think this is a pointless cash grab, and I honestly feel like if you think it's pointless, if you think it's a cash grab, that's one of the beauties of the market, is then great. You've determined that the product is not for you. Skip it. Don't buy it. Don't support it. Don't pay for things or support things that you have a fundamental disagreement with. I think remasters and remakes on mainline titles like The Last of Us or Horizon Zero Dawn, I actually think it makes a lot of sense if you think about it. The PS5 is able to hit such a great level of quality, and then it makes the PC port a more natural pairing, a sort of more natural flow. I think what they're doing is they're creating a baseline. They want all of their major first-party titles to be at PS5 quality, and that then potentially allows them to be updated down the line. The PS5 Pro is, almost assuredly coming out now, and if you have that as your baseline, well, then you can say, hey, we added some new features to The Last of Us Part 2, or hey, we added some new features to Horizon Zero Dawn. If they have that baseline, they could push out free updates, maybe add some more ray tracing, cinematic lighting. There's different things they could do that they weren't able to do prior to this generation, and they've got a lot of mismatched titles now. You've got this amazing quality in Horizon Forbidden West, especially in Burning Shores, but then you have Zero Dawn, and they're not that far removed from each other with respect to performance. God of War 2018 and God of War Ragnarok, I think, are closer, and that's why they were able to just do an update for God of War 2018 with the 4K checkerboard and the 60 FPS. seemingly they don't want to do that if they're remastering The Last of Us Part 2, which is interesting because it came out after God of War 2018. It came out in 2020. So I'm not really sure if they're thinking about this in the realm of, well, we want to capitalize on the show's popularity. Are they trying to create a newer baseline for features for the future of PlayStation beyond just PS5, but also the PS5 Pro as well as the PlayStation 6? I think Sony's also looking at the sales of the PlayStation 5. This is something that I don't think a lot of people are considering, that the PlayStation 5 sales projections are so good, they are likely picking up converts. They have brand new customers that don't have the backlog that you might have. I think that's one of the reasons I get a lot of criticism from both long-standing PlayStation fans as well as Xbox fans, because I don't have a long-standing history with PlayStation. I jumped in with the PS4 Pro so that I could play Spider-Man, and then I played God of War 2018. But I don't have this crazy backlog of games. I also don't have this crazy backlog of history with PlayStation, so I've been less critical about backwards compatibility and the lack of support there. I've been less critical about taking really old games like this, or older games. Obviously, this one's not very old, but taking older games and bringing them back up and doing remakes and remasters. Well, it doesn't bother me as much because I'm newer to the ecosystem, and I think that's something that PlayStation is likely considering, that if they're looking at their own sales reports and they're like, man, a lot of these people are buying a PlayStation 5 and they don't have a backlog of games with us. Well, we should be offering them all of our first-party titles at PlayStation 5 quality, essentially creating a larger library of what you would consider to be PlayStation 5 level games. Even though they're older games that have been brought up, remastered, or given a nice update, that still is giving you a larger library to pull from. So I get why people are rolling their eyes at this and saying, here we go, remaster, remake, is that all we're going to do? But did The Last of Us Part 1 remake, did it hurt anybody? Did it mess with your plans? It's funny to me that most of the criticism comes from people who don't even own the system. They don't like the games. They don't buy into this brand. They don't. They're from the other side. And it's like, why do you care what's going on over here? I don't really care if there's a particular type of game that I don't play. Let's take, sports games or car games or fighting games. If there was a remaster or a remake of a fighting game or a car game that I wasn't interested in, I don't really understand being critical of that, because that's not something that I consume. I'm not feeling like I'm being robbed. Well, the developers are working on a remaster and a remake instead of a new game. Well, if you don't buy their games or support their games, what difference does it make to you what they do? Who cares if they release a remaster of The Last of Us Part 2 or, I don't know, a checkers game? Well, it doesn't matter because you're not buying their games anyway. That's something that I find interesting in this sort of console warring debates and discussions. It's like you seem very upset and bothered by what the platform is doing that you don't even support or buy into. This is mainly, I think, targeting all those brand new PlayStation 5 owners, the people that are jumping into PlayStation's ecosystem for the first time. If they do plan on selling 25 million PlayStation 5s just this year alone and have, recently hit 40 million, and they want to surpass PlayStation 4 saturation, the only way you're doing that is with new converts, with people that are new to the brand. And every time they've done a PS5 restock, there's this huge surge of sales for their first-party games. Whether it's Spider-Man, Miles Morales, Horizon Forbidden West, or God of War, there's always a big bump for those titles. And I think they want to see that library of choices to be bigger. As an example, if Gears of War, the remastered collection that we've been hearing about, if that becomes a thing, I think that would be great for Game Pass. That would be great for Xbox to have one more really good piece of first-party property to put on your main value offering, which is Game Pass. And I think that's why I don't have a problem if PlayStation does something similar and says, hey, we're selling a lot of PS5s, let's give people more PS5 quality games. I think taking mainline titles and bringing them forward, it just makes perfectly good sense to me, and it's very easy to not support it if you don't like it. If you don't own the console, this is no skin off your neck at all. And if you do own the console and you think it's just a cash grab, again, this doesn't hurt you. This doesn't do anything to you. If anything, it puts PlayStation into a better position to firmly cement their property in a good way. If especially it's coming to PC, you don't want another Last of Us Part 1 port situation. You want the next one to hit at a much better level of quality, because if they're able to do that, then they could maybe even sell part 1 as a bundle and say, hey, you know, we kind of messed that one up. This one's at better quality, and now you can maybe buy them bundled together. And again, just further their footprint with their brand outside of just the PlayStation. But the article here from Insider Gaming outlines why we know this is coming, right? The Last of Us, Part 2 remaster seems to be coming. The Last of Us 2 could finally be coming to PlayStation 5. A job description on a Naughty Dog developer's LinkedIn profile suggests that The Last of Us 2 Remastered is currently in development. Right here, you can see this person posted on their LinkedIn down here. You can see what they're saying. And this is the quote: responsible for overseeing the production of all outsourced environment art assets, weapons, and interactive props for 2 iconic titles, The Last of Us Part 1 and The Last of Us 2 Remastered. So that reads the experience of Mark Pagerillo here. I'm probably saying that wrong, but our Tom Henderson had heard rumblings of the game as far back as 2022 in January, but didn't know anything more at the time. It was teased again in July 2023. So there's rumblings already, and Tommy Hendy's got good sources. He has not really missed the mark at all with Sony. He called the Portal. He's been calling for the detachable drive in the unified PS5 SKU. Now that has yet to be confirmed. Everybody keeps calling that one the Slim. I don't think there's a PlayStation 5 Slim. I think it's the unified digital model that you'll be able to add a disk drive to if you want, and then the PS5 Pro. You can see here, of course, the news of The Last of Us 2 Remastered being in existence comes on the heels of trouble surrounding The Last of Us multiplayer game. There have also been layoffs of at least 25 employees. So we did cover that. I covered that in a live show. And the canceling of factions, I think, is inevitable at this point, or I could see them bake it into this remaster and say, let's just give them what we got. It's a game mode, right? I think they had big plans for it. I think they thought it could be a live service game, and I think Bungie took one look at it and said, absolutely, absolutely not. So this is what it looks like right here. You can see this top line where my mouse is where it says The Last of Us 2 Remastered. Now, again, they're citing here how long the game has been out. Originally released for PlayStation 4 in June of 2020, The Last of Us Part 2 is set 5 years after the end of the first game and continues the story of Ellie, as well as introduces the new character named Abby. Now, one of the other things to consider here is the next season of the show is basically going to jump to this storyline. And if that's the case, then I think they're making a pretty sound commercial decision. That if everybody's talking about The Last of Us Part 2 or The Last of Us Season 2, right, you're getting to throw that number 2 around, and you've got a remastered version of your game available, it will sell very, very well. Season 1 of The Last of Us, every single episode caused a surge in sales of the game. So again, they're looking at this and they're just making a smart business decision. They're saying, listen, if we're going to have this piece of property be larger and be more significant than just a game that we talk about or a game that's going to get its 3rd installment. We know they've moved on, it's working on that now. It's going to be bigger than that with this show. I think the show on its own has really elevated the brand of PlayStation as well as The Last of Us as a game. And that's why I think what they did with the PC port of Part 1 was just such an enormous mistake, because that's all anybody really talks about now. It's like, well, yeah, I don't really trust them to do a remaster. I don't really trust them to do whatever because of what they did with the PC port. I think that just goes to show you how long-lasting the shadow can be of a bad launch. This is why games should always take the road of, we're going to come out when we're ready. Like we've seen that with Cyberpunk, right? The share value of CD Projekt Red has still never recovered. Regardless of how amazing Phantom Liberty is doing, everybody's celebrating it. The stretch of damage is still reverberating through, I think, just how successful that company can be. And I think that's going to have an effect on The Last of Us. And this could be a way for them to maybe rebound and say, hey, we got the remaster available on PS5, and then that helps them bring it to PC just as quick. I mean, maybe they do it at the exact same time, and then say, listen, in celebration or in conjunction with Season 2, we've got The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered. So, I get it. I get why people are critical. I just think I'm in a different place as a player. I think a lot of other people are in a different place as a player, and they're just going to be more receptive to this. saying that you're not interested in something, saying that you think something is not worth buying, I think that's a good decision to make as a consumer, but that doesn't mean that the thing itself is not worth making. That doesn't mean that the thing itself is not going to sell well, because there are so many people out there that are latecomers to the PlayStation ecosystem, especially people that are discovering The Last of Us as a game through the TV show. They're probably going to be primed and ready to buy this and enjoy it, because I think it's a fantastic game. I think they sort of set the bar for character-driven, narrative-driven, story-driven games, and that is something that is going to make their third game, I think, a tough one. But I do think I'm going to be checking this one out, because I've got the Part 1 remake in a backlog. This wouldn't need a remake because it's so much later. It's only 3 years old, so just a remaster to add some of the more next-gen amenities like ray tracing and stuff like that. So this is a good one, I think, for the people that want it, and it's obviously irritating for the people that don't. I would love to know what you think in the comments below. This one is an upload on my channel, so it's not a live show, but then I go into a live show. This sort of rolls over and redirects into a members-only debrief. You can become a member on this channel. Hit the join button. I really encourage everybody to pick up that Member Plus. That lets you get into the writer's room where we plan the shows and the uploads that happen. You get to be a part of that. If you don't do memberships on a channel like this, or you can't do one, it's a great way to support by just hitting subscribe and the like button, and then that way I can see you in the next video.